All right, Qualcomm beating estimates in the stock we were just talking about. That is higher after hours. Here to dig into Qualcomm's fourth quarter results, we have Angelo Zino, CFRA, Research Senior Equity Analyst. So, Angelo, let me first just get your reaction to the print. What did you make of it?
I thought the numbers were good. I mean, in terms of the actual results coming in slightly better than expected, and the guidance was also pretty good. I think this pretty much kind of confirms that we're essentially at least at some sort of bottom for, in terms of Qualcomm's, revenue trajectory here, whether it be just seasonal in nature, whether it's sustainable or not, I think is the question. But as far as kind of the declines on the handset side of things, we've definitely been under shipping true end demand here for several quarters. As bad as end demand has been, the sell in has been even worse. So we're actually finding a bottom here. And again, whether or not it's just seasonal in nature, I think remains to be seen, but definitely a good sign for Qualcomm at the moment.
Are we seeing a bottom in everything? Not everything, I'm exaggerating. But Angela, are we seeing a bottom in smartphones, maybe in PCs too, which we know they're trying to push further into, in Internet of Things, like across some of the different business lines? Should we look for that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think the answer is no. So when you kind of look at the semiconductor market right now, it's very bifurcated in nature, right? I mean, we've kind of seen a very big drawdown in terms of inventories on the more consumer, oriented areas of the market, like PCs and smartphones. To your point, we've kind of seen a bottoming on that front here over the last quarter or two. And I think that's a good sign for the likes of a Qualcomm, as far as smartphones are concerned, whether it be an AMD with their results last night, or even like an Intel that we saw last week. I think those type of names are kind of finding a bottoming in terms of their revenue base. But when we start thinking about other type of markets like automotive and industrials, there are definitely a lot more challenges, or kind of a downturn that we're starting to see accelerating in those end markets. And it'll be interesting to kind of see the type of commentary that Qualcomm provides here, as far as the December quarter is concerned, about their automotive and Internet of Things business, because my guess is they've got to be seeing some sort of weakness typical to what we've seen with some of the other chip makers out there.
And Angela, we did have, the company came out, unveiled that new PC chip, and we had the CEO on Yahoo Finance. He was talking very tough there about, listen, he can outperform Apple, he can outperform Intel. Maybe not near term, but let's say intermediate, long term. Do you see that as a tailwind for the company?
Listen, I think it's an opportunity for them. I mean, whether it be getting into PCs or other markets where they're not really deeply entrenched in, I think it's definitely an opportunity where there is kind of new revenue opportunities for them. Now, that being said, you kind of look at what Intel has said about kind of ARM-based chips into the PC market. They don't necessarily believe it. But when you think about what Apple has done on the ARM-based side of things, dumping Intel, and how successful they've been kind of taking share here over the last 2 to 3 years, it's been pretty impressive. Now, Apple, of course, is Apple, and when you kind of look at how far they've pushed the limits in terms of their M3 silicon chip that they just launched this week, kind of based on 3 nanometer technology, it is still ahead, we think, of the Qualcomms of the world, which just kind of launched based on their 4 nanometer technology. But that said, it is absolutely an opportunity for Qualcomm. It's also going to be an opportunity for a name like NVIDIA, which probably gets into the CPU PC market in 2025. So there are going to be other opportunities out there for companies that haven't had the opportunity on the PC side of things, because it has been dominated by x86 architecture, specifically by Intel. So an opportunity, whether or not it transitions too much, I think, again, remains to be seen, and probably is going to take a couple of years before you see notable kind of revenue potential.
Angelo, you mentioned Apple, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask about it. I mean, obviously, Qualcomm is a little bit of an unusual indicator when it comes to Apple, because it's both a client of and competitor to at this stage. But what's the read-through, if any, from Qualcomm to what we're going to hear from Apple?
I wouldn't read through too much into it. I mean, we've kind of learned that in the past, right? I mean, you kind of look at just the last quarter results, and Qualcomm took a big beating, and Apple actually did fairly well. So I don't know if I'd look too much into it. But that said, I do think kind of you're seeing a stabilization in terms of the broader smartphone market out there. They're probably going to see some challenges, clearly on the China side of things, and we clearly want to know a lot about what Apple has to say about China tomorrow night. But nonetheless, I mean, it's a good sign that the broader market in terms of smartphones is stabilizing. It'll be important to see what Qualcomm on this call has to say, if anything, about the Android versus kind of the iOS ecosystem out there. My guess is some of the uplift, or a good amount of the uplift, is coming on the Android side of things because it's been so beaten down. But nonetheless, I think it's definitely promising to see a stabilization within the smartphone side of things.